So this is my teammate. She's on stage 2. I'm on stage 1. We'll do the whole introduction thing in a bit. If you're here, I want to start off with a sort of a personal story. Let's get rid of this. It's not the most useful. It was January 4th this year. The new year just kicked off. Everything was great. It was a weekend, and I was walking in San Francisco with my wife to grab breakfast skinware. And in the middle of walking, I have this huge pain wave, which I don't usually have. I actually am relatively blessed to have at least health. So I pretty much go through my knees. I buckle. I'm like, okay, that's interesting, right? I get back up. My wife's like, what's up? Do we need to go home? I'm like, no, I think it's fine, right? I'll walk it off, no worries. So we get to the breakfast place, and before I even order, I have another pain wave. And before they actually bring out our order, I'm standing outside, dry heaving, trying to not throw up because of pain waves. I never had this. I'm not sure if you have. For me, it was completely new experience. So we go back home. I go to bed, take some painkillers, and try to get through it, right? I have no idea what's going on. By midnight, I wake up my wife and I tell her, I think we need to go to the ER. This is not going away on its own. So go to the ER, check in there, and the nurse, very nicely says, yeah, just so you know, it's going to be 8 hours before you can see a doctor. I'm like, what? It's yeah, there's a line because it's the middle of the night in a big city, right? So I'm like, okay, well, what alternative do you have? She says, well, there's another ER not too far from here, and they sometimes have shorter line, but I don't know. So I'm like, you know what? The pain wave has subsided. Let's go back home. So at home, I call my primary care doctor, my first-line doctor, and that's at One Medical, so you can call them any time of day. And while I'm on hold to speak to someone there, I also open ChatGPT and I tell it, hey, I have these pain waves in my lower left abdomen. What could it be? By the time I actually get a result there, the nurse also picks up and she gives me some options, but she tells me, really, Frank is my official first name, sorry, you have to go to an ER to get this diagnosed. So I do, and get checked into that second ER straight away, and an hour and a half later, the doctor, they did a CT scan, and the doctor triumphantly tells me that I have a kidney stone. I'm not sure why she needed to be that happy about it, but I think it was the fact that they were able to diagnose me. So I got my first kidney stone. If anyone here had a kidney stone before or was next to someone, you know that those are not fun. By the way, the nurse on the phone had told me the same thing. ChatGPT told me the same thing. It gave a few options. Kidney stones were the top of that list. The big difference between these is how available these are, right? Of course, I trust the doctor more than I trust ChatGPT. But one of them initially had an 8-hour wait time, and the other one was right in my pocket. So that made me think of how I use LLMs in my personal and in my professional life, and that's what I want to talk about today. So my name is Puff. You can also call me Frank. That's totally fine. And if you recognize me, that might be because I worked at Google on Firebase for a decade. And if you ever use Stack Overflow answers to get Firebase working, you're welcome. But I now work at Flutterflow, and we build Flutter tools. We'll get to that in a bit. And I want to talk a bit about how I use LLMs in my personal and professional life. Oh, and we're going to play a game, by the way. Make sure that your phone is charged. We're going to get to a multiplayer game that I'm going to be building. Well, I've built it already. I'm going to show you how I build it with vibe coding tools. Okay, so let's start off with the state of LLMs. And LLMs are tools. You won't hear me using the term AI or ML very much, because I think those are contentious. I had a very interesting discussion yesterday with somebody who passionately is against using these tools. But the moment you just say it's a tool, it's like a fancy autocomplete, things change, right? So these are not we've all seen the sci-fi movies, right? Where these robots are sentient and they have a conversation and are smarter than me. That's not the feeling I have when I use an LLM. That said, it's a great tool for all kinds of things. And I noticed that I use these tools very differently when it's in a domain that I'm fluent at, coding, right? I'm a decade-long coder, so I'm good at that. Or when it's a domain that I'm not very good at, right? So I'm not a medical professional, even though, funnily, I graduated medical computer science. So I might be one of a dozen of those, but I'm definitely not good at this, right? But I use it there very differently, because I use it sort of as, for the very old timers, I would use an encyclopedia. But for all the others, how I would use a search engine, right? I use it to search through the vast volume of information that's available about something that I'm very not knowledgeable at, to get an answer
distilled for my specific question, right? And I think it's great for that. It really helps, of course, that the science behind kidney stones is well established, right? So this is not something that changes every week, right? Like when the model was trained, the guidance on how to diagnose a kidney stone and how to treat it was pretty much the same, which is really awesome about it because we'll see some examples where it's not. So we're first going to do the noob thing, and then we'll get to the coding part, which is probably more interesting. So I live in San Francisco. I love my city. We travel the city a lot. We go around a lot. And a few weeks ago, we were sitting at the San Francisco ballpark, which is where they play the baseball games. And right across the water, there's a beautiful park with a beach, and you can sit there and listen into the game instead of having to sit there for like 9 innings watching nothing happen. And it was wonderful, but I noticed when I was looking, it's like, huh? Is there a tram on top of that? So I took out my phone and started ChatGPT's, I'm not sure what they call it, but voice mode, right? It's the one where they try to use Scarlett Johansson's voice. They didn't, but, and I started a conversation with it, and I took a transcript of the conversation. Now, this was audio conversation. The transcript was not great, it turns out, so I'm going to fill in the blanks that we get. So, right, I said, hey, I'm at the San Francisco ballpark, I see a tram, what is it? And it tells me it's the Transamerica Pyramid, a skyscraper in San Francisco. Now, I've lived there for over a decade. That's not the Trans Am Pyramid. I know this very well. So I interrupt it, right? Like because it's a machine, you don't have to be polite and let it finish its sentence, right? And it's like, no, I'm at the ballpark and I want to know that tram that you have there. What is it? So it says, you're at the Oracle Park. Oh, you little know-it-all, right? It's like, yes, I know it's called the Oracle Park. I just don't like promoting somebody else's brand. Right? It's like, it's fine, right? And it's part of the Coca-Cola fan lots, 2 brands. I hope I get paid for these, right? And it's like, it actually is, right? And it's like giant Coca-Cola bottle. It actually is there. There's a baseball glove. I get all of these. It's like, but that's not what I'm asking it, right? I want to know that tram. So what's the tram itself? And then it starts like, it's a super slide. And it's like, I don't think it is. So I asked it, and that's the part that's missing here. It's like, hey, if I turn on my camera and I show you, can you tell me better? It says, oh yes, if you show me a picture, I can definitely tell you. So you can see that here because there's a tiny camera icon there. So I turn on my camera and I showed it the tram. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay, it's a lousy picture, but that's the tram. And yes, if you are from the area, it's a cable car. I'm sorry, right? I didn't think of that when I was searching for it. And so I show it that, and it's like, oh, I see what you're pointing at, right? That's the Oracle Park gondola. It really likes saying Oracle Park, apparently. You wonder if it's a sponsored mention. But it's like, okay, it's a gondola. Sure, like that sounds plausible, right? And then it's like, it's a tram-like ride that shuttles passengers from like the water level to the, and I'm like, I don't think it is, right? Not at all. I've been here plenty. Like, that's not at all what it does. So what do we do, right? When you ask somebody, like, and you get an answer where you're like, you made this up, you ask for proof. So I did. And, right, it did the thing. It's like, no, I don't have any proof ready, but, like, I'm quite sure there's plenty available. Like, that's pure nonsense, right? So what do? We go to another expert, right? So by this point, my wife took out Google, and she still has the AI Gemini search results at the top, which have gotten quite good. I had to replay what she did in AI mode, right? And we searched for Oracle Park gondola. And I love what happened here, because the first thing Gemini says is there might be some confusion. Right? This is Gemini throwing ChatGPT under the bus here, right? It's like, I think you got that wrong, little ChatGPT, right? And it says it's either one of these. There's a static cable car on Oracle Park, and there's the Salesforce gondola, and if you haven't been to San Francisco in a while, or even if you're going, there's this wonderful new Salesforce Park. I'm really naming all the brands, am I not? Crazy. But it's really called Salesforce Park. It's 4 levels above street level. It's multiple blocks, and there's a gondola that you can take to go up and down. It's wonderful. There's usually a line. There's also elevators, escalators, and stairs. Like, so you don't need to get into the gondola, but it's there. So this is what I actually wanted to know, right? It's an old cable car from 1887, crazy old, right? And it's a display piece, right? It's not a ride. It's like, thank you. Was this so hard, right? And all I'm thinking is like, I wish they talked to each other. Right? If ChatGPT had like talked to Gemini and said, I think it's the gondola thing, right? They could have figured this out apparently. So guess what? Kate Lovett from the Flutter team like actually does this. She asked the question to one of the LLMs, pastes the output into the 2 others, and then pastes the output of those 2 back into the original to get an answer. And she calls it the board of LLMs, and all I'm like, where can I download this app? Right? Because this is what I need. So this is for things that I'm not very good at. So remember, it's a very fast way to search an encyclopedia. It's also a very good way to make up pages in the encyclopedia as it sees fit, right? It's not guaranteed to give you a correct answer, which is fully what we know from LLMs. But as they are getting better for these types of use cases, it's something we have to remind ourselves of, right? If it sounds implausible, double check. Okay, state of LLMs. Games. I love games. Actually, one of the things I really love doing is playing, like building a game for like an event like this and then playing it together. So that's what I've been doing. And to tell you a bit about that, I first want to tell a bit about Flutterflow. I swear I'm not trying to sell you on it, but it's relevant to the story. You've already seen it because the templates that I use for these slides show Flutterflow here. So this is our tool, and it's a visual designer to build Flutter apps. So it's like in the vein of Visual Basic or Delphi, right? On the left, you have a palette of widgets. You can drag them into the center, and then you can set properties on the right? And that's how you can build the tool, or your app, sorry. So this is a project I have open. It's like a very basic chat app to just test some things. And here on the left, you see that I have multiple pages. Then I have one page selected, the home page, and it shows the widget tree for that page. Now, if you've done Flutter, which we all have, right, you know that this widget tree looks really shallow, right? If you open the widget tree in the Flutter debug tools, it goes all the way down, right? So we actually work on higher abstraction level. So our widgets are more complex. They have more properties than the standard widgets ones, and we'll see that in a moment. Now, you select a widget. Here I've selected the home page, and then you see the parameters and route, because it's a page, it has like a route. And then you see the properties for that, and you can change those properties. Now, it looks like Flutter widgets, but they are sort of like, they're on top of Flutter widgets. For example, here I selected the column widget, and that's this column, by the way, because the list view was different. And a column, right, in Flutter is a widget where you stack other widgets, right? And a column can overflow, right? You can add too many child widgets to a column, and then it either shows up as that black and yellow hashing, right? Or you have to make it scrollable, which in Flutterflow you can do by setting a scrollable property. Now, anyone who's done Flutter columns is like, huh? Because this is the Flutter column documentation, and here's the list of properties, and there's no scrollable. It's like, okay, that's interesting, right? Like, where does this come from? Well, so like I said, Flutterflow uses higher abstraction level widgets, right? We generate Flutter code. So when you're dragging and dropping like these widgets into your tree, Flutterflow actually keeps an internal structure, and that's the whole thing I needed to tell you, right? It doesn't really directly manipulate Flutter code. It has this internal representation of what you did, and then when needed, we generate a Flutter app out of this. And so in this case, the column is not scrollable, the little X is selected, and that means that we generate this. But now when I make the column scrollable, we generate this. We wrap the column in a single child scroll view. That's all we do, right? It's basic string manipulation. And this is, for most of us here, this is like, yeah, of course, that's how you make it scrollable. If Kate was here, she should say, or you could use a sliver puff, right? But this is how most of us would do that. And that is fine. Flutterflow is used by a lot of non-traditional developers to build apps. And they really like the fact that there's a property that says it's scrollable, yes or no, right? It also means that the tree is a lot less deep, right? And this is, I typically say that Flutter is an object-oriented UI framework. You have lots of objects who have a single purpose, where Flutterflow and Visual Basic and Delphi and all these other tools is a component-based framework. You have fewer components, but each of them has a lot of properties that you can manipulate to get the behavior you want. Okay, so Flutterflow stores the widget tree and generates Flutter code from that. And who had heard of Flutterflow before? I expect a chuckle on this one. Come on, we are known for generating spaghetti, right? Actually, I don't think it is, but we do generate a lot of code for the amount of things that you do. And the reason for that is that Flutter is a lower abstraction level framework than Flutterflow works on. There's definitely things that could be better in the code that Flutterflow generates. Don't get me wrong, we're always trying to improve that, but this is the thing to keep in mind. Because it now gets interesting, we get to AI. I said I wouldn't use it, but we were trying to add AI features to the product. And so remember, we have an internal representation of your project. This is like a structure we made up. And then we were trying to get the AI to generate that structure. And you know, LLMs are not good at generating your own structure, something you came up with. Because they're trained on all this public material, and there's not very much material in our domain-specific language, right? We made it up. So then we try to correct that, right, by system prompts, by all kinds of context that we provide. Doesn't work very well. So that's not good. And you know one thing about if you've done these LLMs, do you know what they're really good at? generating Flutter code, right? They really love generating a lot of Flutter code. It's almost like the spaghetti, right? So LMs are really good at generating Flutter code, but that left us in a bit of a pickle, right? Because how do we now get Flutterflow developers the AI tools that they want? So we decided to build a new tool for that called Dreamflow. And Dreamflow is the type where you type what you want and it generates a Flutter app for you. And that's awesome. If who has used V0? Like definitely Bolt.new, right? Is anyone, by the way, entered in the hackathon that they're doing right now? Oh, you should. It's a fun hackathon, right? And it's similar, right? But where V0 and Bolt generate React Next apps, Dreamflow generates a Flutter app, which we should all like more, right? Like definitely a better app. And that's really cool to do. What we found is that people love generating small games. And I'm not kidding. When we first got this working internally, I come into the office and everyone's playing this like ballistics game where you're throwing rocks at each other, like thing. Like the entire engineering team is sitting at like a large table and they're all like playing that game with each other. It's like, guess what? Like it's fun to generate these games. Here's Kate again. Kate from the Flutter team also did that. We did not ask her to do this. She was like, what can I do with Dreamflow? Oh, I love this game called Chirel. I don't know it, but Kate generated it, and she was so excited about doing that. I'm like, hey, I want to play a game at the conference. I can use this. So this is my Dreamflow project history in one of my accounts that I have there. It's reverse chronological, and I spent an afternoon just trying some game concepts, which I would normally not do if I have to do this myself, right? If I have to write the game from scratch, I would probably first think about what would be a good game and then start creating it. But since here I just type like a few words and I get like a small version of that game, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try and generate a few games and then decide which one works. So the first one I did, these bottom two are like just other projects. The first one I did was Minesweeper, and this is like the game that it generated. And we use Claude Code for this, so it took 5 to 7 minutes, and it generated this game. And like, it's a working Minesweeper game. You can also see that I'm not very good at it. Right? And I decided, well, that's not really a great game to use at a conference, but all it cost me was like 5 minutes and like probably 30 seconds of typing this minimal prompt. Like, okay, that's a good way to figure out what game I can do, right? So I tried XPilot, I tried Flappy Bird type games, and I ended up deciding that I wanted to create an asteroids game that we're gonna all play in like 15 minutes. We're gonna break the server, it's fun. Okay, so here's the prompts that I did. Now, we're not gonna read them out, but I did 3 iterations, and mostly I already knew that I needed something that works well on my laptop, so that I can like control it, and that works well on phone, because that's where you're gonna use it, right? So I told it a bit about that, and then it just generated something. And here's what it generated. I was like, wow, that looks fancy, right? And then here's the game. The controls are a bit finicky. They still are, by the way. I didn't get to update them. But you can see it's like, oh, I can shoot. Like, it splits the asteroid. It's actually not bad at all. Now, mind you, I have no idea what the code looks like, but this is a good starting point. Now, back then, Dreamflow didn't support any like backend as a service yet. And since I want to make a multiplayer game, I need to wire it up to some cloud-based service. So I needed to continue working on this in a tool that does support that. And back then, we're going to making it multiplayer. Back then, Dreamflow had this button at the top that said, edit in Flutterflow. Like the generated app, edit in Flutterflow. There's just one problem with it. Remember, Flutterflow uses its own internal structure, and Dreamflow generates a Flutter app. So this button never worked. Yet somehow, there's blog posts describing like people doing this and clicking the button and continuing in Flutterflow. Like the Mandela effect, I'm not sure if you know that one. It's like, people claim that they have this working. I'm like, it doesn't just not like work, it doesn't exist, right? It can't have worked. So we're actually working on making an IDE that can edit the Flutter like apps. But while we're working on that, I needed to prep for this demo, so I decided to download the code, which is a wonderful thing, right? It's in general, in Flutterflow, while we are a low-code type tool, we want folks to be able to download the code and continue working on it. So I decided to do that. Download the code and just open it in VS Code, which is what I used back then. Tied up to Copilot, to OpenAI's models, like all good. So I want to show you a few of the prompts that I've done there, like for learnings of using LLMs, we're finally back to that one, for things that I am really good at. I'm actually a decent coder, so I did that. So I started off in VS Code with OpenAI. At some point switched to using Cursor, that's why this list is relatively short. But these are like some of the prompts I gave it, and I specifically want to look at this one, because as I said, I worked on Firebase for a decade, so believe me, I know very well how to add the Firebase real-time database to a project, right? Like I helped design the APIs for that. I know this. But I still used an LLM to do this for me. And I had to think of this when Chris was doing his keynote, right? You could see that he was instructing the MCP server. And I'm not sure if it was obvious to anyone else. He was like literally typing the command line for the MCP server almost in his prompt. Right? It was very clear that Chris knew how to do this himself. Right? And that's what I'm doing here. So this is the instruction, and it's very similar to what Chris did. It's like, I know exactly what I expect out of this. I wanted to use the Firebase real-time database because it's better suited for this type of project. Firestore would have been the same. It would have given a different result. So Copilot searches for what it needs. It searches my code base, right? And then it makes two changes. It adds dependencies to the pub spec, and it generates some code. So here's the diff for the dependencies, and it's like, oh, that actually looks good, right? That's fine. The versions are a bit old, so it probably shows when their model was trained, but like aside from that, all good. And this is the code it generated. It's like, oh yeah, like it's not what I would have done, but it's probably shorter than what I would have done. So, looks good to me, right? Like totally fine. So I like this because this is something I could have done myself, but I didn't have to do it myself, right? It finds the files. So I continued in Cursor, and like this has been the project of like on and off for about 2-3 months now. Like, and definitely not something I work on full time. You'll see, it's not great. But it's definitely a long list of chat sessions that I have. I'm not sure who uses like Copilot or Cursor or something like that for coding. Okay, so you know, right, that these sessions add up over time, right? And each session can be like one prompt, or it can be 27 iterations. We'll see some of those. So I picked a few that are interesting here. For example, when the game was generated, it was a single-player game, so you play it on your like one phone. But when we do it multiplayer, somebody else might be holding their phone like this, somebody else might be on a tablet, I might start it on my laptop. We need to all see the same playfield, which means that I both need to persist the playfield somewhere where we can all see it in like a database, but also we need to like all like be on the same virtual playfield. So that's what I told it, right? Create me a virtual playfield for 2000. And objects in this playfield wrap around the screen. So it's an infinite playfield when you're playing it, right? So that you don't constantly, so that not everyone is clustered at the center. That's the main reason you do this. Oh, I was also a game developer for a few years, sorry. So I've done many things. So I knew how to do these types of things. And then it started searching for this. It found in my code, because I gave it the context, it found where it needed to make the changes, and it generated the changes. I'm not going to look at that. Honestly, they're not that interesting. What I did find interesting is that it then introduced some linter errors, and it fixed those. So this is months ago, and it was already the agentic behavior that Chris was also talking about, right? Where it can fix its own problems. Believe me, it can also introduce many more problems that I then have to fix, but that's okay. Because that's what I noticed when I use an LLM for something I'm good at, is that I'm the lead, I'm the boss, right? I say technical product manager, as in I don't just know how I want it to behave, I actually know how I want it implemented. And I'm also the tech lead, and honestly, I'm also the tester, right? I end up testing the result all the time. I still use the LLM because it's a much faster typer than I am, and it's really good at searching a code base that I might not necessarily be an expert at, because remember, I generated the code, right? And it's also really good at cross-referencing, by the way. And I love that, but keep in mind, it's my responsibility to check it, right? Like, it's a tool, it's not a brain. That's what you have to realize. I didn't hire it to be a senior developer on my team. It's a tool that I gave some instructions. So let's all pretend that we're an asteroids expert for a minute. And think of the game, right? And think of an asteroid in the game. One of the main reasons I picked this game is because I'm constantly thinking of bandwidth usage. And in the game of asteroids, one of the things that's wonderful is when you spawn an asteroid at a certain location, it has a position, and you do that at a certain time, and it has a direction that is moving at a certain speed. And those, like from that, you can always determine where the asteroid is. Nothing changes, it's immutable. For bandwidth usage in a game, this is wonderful. Right, because it means I just need to write the asteroid to the database when it's created, and I need to delete it when it gets removed. Right? And when you shoot an asteroid, then it splits into two smaller ones. That's right, deleting the big one, creating two new ones. So it's an immutable database, and that's really wonderful about it. Let's have a quick look at that, if you're new to this, also because I decided I could generate some graphics now that ChatGPT can write the Python code for me. So here's an asteroid that was created at time 0, that's like just easiest. It starts at x 1010, and I say that it has a speed of 10,5. So now at time 10, it's at 110.60, right? Because 10 plus 10 times 10, and 10 plus 10 times 5, right? And then on time 20, it's here. I made the playfield slightly bigger because the text was not flowing. But now what happens, right? This is the thing that I told it to do. Now it needs to wrap, right? So it ends up here because we need to wrap it around. Okay, that's not the behavior I got. So this is what happens. So I had a long to-do list, and I had in there, it's like, there's some, like, when I have multiple clients, they're not in sync, right? I think I have some latency, right? I had all these things in there. Until at some point, I added probably 100 asteroids to the database, and I let it sit there for half an hour. I didn't immediately start creating, shooting at them and recreating new ones. I just let it sit. And this is not what I expected at all, right? They start from the corners. Does anyone already want to take a gamble what is wrong? Because for me, as having done game development, this was immediately obvious. We'll look at the code. So every game has an update loop. That's how games work. It calls update for every frame normally, right, if it's a local game. And then it does a tiny update to the position of every object. And here's what originally was created. It's called update original because I had to recover it from history. So it says the new position is the old position plus velocity times the time that we have. And this code is supposed to run 60 times per second. But that's not what I did, because I created a persistent world, remember? I store it in the database. Mine could run every 60 seconds or every 60 minutes, right? I don't care. And this is how it determines whether it's off the end or the start. So if the new position is to the left of the current, of the screen, then we move it to the rightmost. And if it's to the right of the playfield, we move it to 0. This works wonderful if you do minimal updates, if you call it 60 times per second. But I don't. Remember, I load it from the database, and it might be, the asteroid might have been created half an hour ago. So, right, and it's great. That means that we clip it to 0, which is exactly what you saw it doing. And the reason it was moving into the center is because it depends on the dx and dy, right? If they're positive, it will go to the bottom right, and the whole thing. So this is not how you should do it. In fact, the code to do this is much simpler. This is how you do this. You use a modulo operation to divide it by the playfield width. And this always works. This is wonderful, right? When I discovered this a long time ago, this is simple. It's also much shorter than the original, right? I could type this, but do you think I did type this? Oh, I asked Cursor to generate this for me, right? So do the wrapping with a modular operation. By the way, notice that I said modular, not modulo, and it still understood what I wanted. In fact, it copied my typo into the comment. I love that, right? It's but this is a modular operation. So, this is really nice because I'm in control, and I use it to do things that I could do myself, but it's just a faster typer. But I'm the one finding where the problem is. If I had asked it, right, if I had told it, it's hey, I see that all the asteroid starts from the corner, they go into the center, it would have done that. But that's sort of what Chris was doing, right? I'm leading you towards the solution. Here it's no, I know the solution, I just want you to type it for me. It's just faster. Okay. Preventing abuse or making something multiplayer. I already said a bit about bandwidth, right? Asteroids are wonderful because they're fully predictable, right? Once you've created them, nothing changes. Players are very not predictable. They tend to press whatever they want on the screen. And I need to make sure the bandwidth usage is correct. Latency I tend to ignore for now, mostly because there's no player versus player aspect, and abuse we'll see in a bit. So bandwidth, I would always do a back of the napkin type calculation, right? Things like that. I was now doing that with Cursor, and then at some point it had it initially thought it was a linear relationship. It's not, right? When you have 2 players, it's 2 players writing, 2 players reading, so that's 4. But when you have 4 players, it's 4 players writing, 4 players reading, so now we're 16, right? It's exponential. So once I had told it, I'm pretty sure it's exponential, it was oh yeah, here's the table, do you want me to draw a chart of that? And it's that's awesome, right? I would never do this on my napkin. But that's pretty neat. But abuse is the most fun one, because it seems like I might have leaked the URL for my game at some point. So every morning when I'd wake up, this is what it looks like. And this is somewhere between 1,000 and 2,500 asteroids. Now, keep in mind, bandwidth-wise, I couldn't care less, because they're created, nothing is happening with them, right? They don't eat any bandwidth. But it was still a bit annoying, because actually Firebase was making it harder to delete this data. And you can see there's some things moving around. Those are the ships. They're trying to shoot down the 2,500 asteroids. Collision detection was off at this point, thank goodness. Right? But it's annoying. I need to protect this. Well, this is a cloud-hosted database, so anyone can read and write to it. So what do? Most people would spin up a server, but I had decided that I want to run on Firebase's free plan, so I couldn't spin up a server. So I decided to use Firebase security rules. Who knows Firebase security rules? Hands up. Okay, who has written security rules? Really? It's better than expected. Who likes writing security rules? Yeah, that's what I expected. Okay, good. I happen to like that, but the security rules are a custom DSL that controls who can access what part of the database, read and write, and it controls what you can write. It's a DSL, which was why it was interesting to me. I was like, what? It's a documented DSL. It's quite well documented. How would the tool do if I generate these computers? Oh, by the way, like, nobody likes writing these security rules. This is what I found. I used the LLM to do things that I could do myself, but that I would not necessarily do myself. Like, anyone like using an LLM for generating unit tests? Yeah, my hand doesn't go because I don't do unit tests, period. But like, right, it's definitely great for that type of thing. Firebase security rules are the other one. Now we get to one of my longest chat sessions. So to write security rules, to be able to do that, you need to make sure that the data that you need, like that the security rules need to check, is in the database. For example, security rules cannot count the number of asteroids. They just don't have that built in because it would be a horribly expensive operation. So you need to store the count. But to do that securely without a server, that means that, like, I need to have a counter in the database, and then when somebody creates an asteroid, they need to increment the counter. When, like, they destroy an asteroid, they need to decrement the counter, and vice versa. When they increment the counter, they need to create an asteroid. And I know how to do this, so my first instruction was, hey, add the counter and make sure that we increment, decrement. Now, this was one of my longer sessions with Cursor, with Claude. Right, because we go through this, it generates code where I'm like, yeah, let's not use a transaction, bad idea, right? We go through all of this and wrong code, wrong code. At some point it starts generating security rules, and it, like, remember the encyclopedia where it makes up pages? It made up an entire API for security rules that doesn't exist. And then I check, it's like, why is it doing that? Because the rest of it looked fine. It's like, it didn't have the data that it needed. And instead of telling me, it's like, hey, Puff, you are not giving me the data that I need, it just made up an API. Right? It's like, it's wonderful. If you implement that API, it's great. I sort of have like a history of knowing how long it takes to get an API added to Firebase, so I decided to give it the data, and then it generated the right rules. And the rules are pretty long. I could have written them. I didn't have to write them myself. That was wonderful about it. Okay, next door they're done, so that means that we are ready to play a game. Who's ready to get this out? Okay, now fair warning, this game is not in any finished state. So we do have a shared playfield. The asteroids should be in a very similar location if you look to your neighbor. The ships are interesting, they're jumping around a bit. You know, let's actually watch it. So it starts in preview mode. I'm going to leave this one in preview mode because I'm not going to play, but this is the entire playfield, and you can see that there's 3 ships here. As you are joining, more ships should be appearing, by the way. I have no idea how many we have now. Oh, good, good, good. And you can see that we have 3 teams, but there's no team scoring yet. What was that, Scott? I don't hear. How do we? You click the button. Wait, hold on. When you start, some people are like getting this. You click watch game, and then there should be a join game button at the bottom. Like I said, I'm not going to click. Oh, this is wonderful. It's as I often say, I love doing organized chaos. Like, and this is definitely organized chaos, right? Okay. Now you'll see, like, on your own screen, if you are playing, it's hard to control, by the way. I know that. Like, I definitely need to do something about the controls, but it does really work. So by the time we have 100 people playing, that's the end of my free plan, but that's about it. You'll see that ships that are not your own are sort of jumpy. I need to do some latency compensation there that I didn't do yet. But you can shoot the asteroids. Actually, let me do something else here. Let me start a local debug mode, and I'll show you some things. So I'm starting a local Chrome here to run it in debug mode, and then you'll see some other controls. Because keep in mind, everything here is like running on Firebase, but secured through security rules that I generated, and I think they're pretty okay, because remember, I'm responsible for them. So I'm going to watch the game, and now I get some extra buttons here at the bottom. So I'm going to spawn an asteroid. You know what? I'm going to spawn 10 asteroids. So now it's a lot busier on your screen, right? There's a lot more asteroids going around. And I'm not sure if you know this, but like, wow, you're all shooting them down very fast. Awesome, I love that. So I can keep spawning asteroids, but somehow I can never get the counter far above 50 because I've set a maximum number of asteroids. Let's actually look at the security rules for that are, where are we? Oh, sorry, this is the database that's running. Honestly, it's not ideal, so let's do... There we are. I created a little database viewer that honestly is better for this. So this is the asteroids being created and destroyed. You see that there's only red and green. Green is a new asteroid created, red is being destroyed. Which is wonderful, right? Here's the players. You can see that's all yellow. You're all constantly updating your bloody ships, right? It's wonderful. There's actually one for the bullets. They are also somewhat synchronized. That's even worse. But the asteroids is a very nice thing. The bandwidth that we're using is also quite low, while you're actually creating a lot of asteroids. Okay, remember I said there is a maximum here? And that's because I have a node in my database, sorry, where is it? There we are, that says that we can have a maximum of 50 asteroids. But there's no fun in that. Let's say that we can have a maximum of 150 or 250 asteroids. So now I can spawn many more asteroids. Come on, shoot them down, shoot them down. You can do this. Come on, come on, come on, come on. It will never go over 250, or not by much. There might be a one-off at some point. You can, by the way, you don't have the buttons, but you could just take the code and write to this database. It's fine. Even with your own code, you can never go above the 250 that I set as a limit, because that's enforced by the database itself. Okay, not a finished game. If you come to some more conferences later in the year, I hope to have team play ready. I wish we could have done stage versus stage play, but not today. That's all I had for you. If you want to contact me, these are all of the ones that I could fit on the slides. I wrote some articles about Flutter, Firebase, and all these things on puff.io. That's my own website. I'm Puff. You've been awesome. Thank you for playing along with me.